this tin here that I got from consignment shop. Just thin tin. And I am going to use Saltwash to create a really interesting finish on this. And I'm going to be mixing it first. The first layer will be using Retique with Retique in spiced cider. So we're going to mix 1 to about 3/4 for the mixture. I'm going to use this little container here. Has a lid in case I have any left over that I want to use on something else. And the idea is to dab it on kind of globby and then wait till it's almost dry, like after it's dried for a little bit, and then you just take the brush and brush it over it to smooth down some of the points, and then you do a second coat. So let's get started. So I'm adding the spiced cider. I think I'm going to do 3 scoops because I wouldn't mind having some left over. And then I will add 2 scoops of the Saltwash. Kind of. I like being a mixologist, so I like to just kind of play with my concoctions. Supposed to be the consistency of like a thick pudding. You can add Saltwash to any, move that over there so I don't get it in the jar. You can add Saltwash to any paint. This is the first time I've ever added it to the Retique paint. It's kind of a thick consistency. Want to mix it up really good till it's like a thick pudding. You know, you can't I do suggest you exactly measure. I seldom do because I'm pretty familiar with this stuff now. When you get to know your paint and you get to know your other stuff like Saltwash and that kind of thing, you kind of get a feel for what things are supposed to be like, and you really don't have to measure as much. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more paint to this. I want to make it a little bit smoother. I need to always remind myself to put the lids back on right away, or else I forget. Okay, that should be about right. Yeah, that smoothed it out just a little bit more. I think I'll use my paint stick to stir it right now. And don't be afraid, I'm always telling you this, don't be afraid to experiment, play around. You know, no one's gonna die if you make a total disaster of your project. Usually you can just repaint. Now this will be a little different because this is gonna be texture. I do love texture. But really, let yourself experiment. It's fun to do. There's the Saltwash. And it kind of just adds, I don't know, I think it just adds a really nice flavor to your pieces, whether it's furniture or decor, to do something different. Okay, I'm just going to use this brush here. This is an Annie Sloan pure bristle brush. I've had this for a long time. And the nice thing about this is that if I run out, I can always make more. Okay, so let's apply it. You just kind of dab it on. You want it globby. This is going to be our base layer. Just kind of gives it some texture. Do it heavier in some spots, lighter in others, just to give it variety. Let's do it all the way around. So I am going to look around for something else to use this on since I've got some in here. Find some little project. I know. I think I might use it on a plaque. Stuff like this you can use to demonstrate colors or techniques. When you have customers come over, you can pull out a plaque and say, oh, this is what Saltwash is, or this is what layering, or this is what my stenciling looks like. Have you tried the Retique paint yet? I'm finding it to be very nice quality. I started carrying it in my store before I'd even had a chance to try it out because they were fairly new at the time. And so one by one, I have been trying it out, and I really, really like it a lot. Okay, here we go. Doing this, I can experiment with other colors on top of this. It's been drying for a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and knock down the peaks just a little bit using my Retique brush. Love this little thing. It's the Wonder Brush. If you've not heard of it before, it's flexible. It holds paint really well. It's inexpensive. It's just I guess it's a Wonder Brush. Just knocking down the peaks a little bit. So they're not so severe because we want it to be naturally aged looking. So just gently knocking them down. And you can see it's got some texture. I did the same thing on the plaques, but I used different top coats to decide what color I want to put over top of this. So let's sand it off and see what we find. I'm using just a really rough sanding sponge, and basically all you do is sand off to get the worn look of the color underneath. And, you know, continue doing the edges and such. Okay, now let's try the white one. Here's the look of the white over the base color. So now I am adding a coat of water-based polyurethane. To give it a nice finish, bring out the color a bit, and then after it's dry, I will do a little more decorating. When I stencil, which I will probably be stenciling on this, I like to have a coat of poly on before I stencil. That gives me the ability to wipe off a stencil if I don't like it. Have you tried using other things instead of a paintbrush to decorate with? I used some Bermuda blenders, number 3. Just squeezed a little bit of it on the cardboard and used my wadded up cellophane and just going around and blending in the edges a little bit to add a little bit more interest. I did the same thing with this one over here. It's a little bit lighter orange than the base coat that I used. And just dabbed a little bit onto the cardboard and just went around and highlighted the edges. Get creative. Use different things for a paintbrush. Instead of a paintbrush, use other things like wadded up wax paper or cellophane or wadded up brown paper. Just give it a try. Now from here on out, I'm going to decorate this, and then that'll give me a little bit of experience before I work on that one. Okay, back to the plaques. I'm going to finish these off before deciding what to do with my vase. So what I did was grab some stencils and then some script and played around a little bit with these. And then I took a sandpaper after a sanding sponge after I finished stenciling, and I aged it. And I like the look, so I'm going to transfer that idea over to the vase. So I decided to paint over the orange in a teal and then shaded a little bit of kind of a stripy look on top of that to give it a little bit of vari color. And then after that, I waited for it to dry and then took myself a sanding sponge and sanded over the whole piece to bring out the orange underneath, because remember that first layer was Saltwash mixed into the orange so that it would be raised and have texture. So when I sand it, then some of that orange is going to come out. It gives it an old, rustic, aged look. If you've been with me for a while, you know I love texture and you know I love different backgrounds. Plain just is not always appealing on certain pieces. And on something like this, where it's kind of the supportive piece, because you're going to probably pop something in the top of this when you stage. So you're going to want something that's going to be subtle but supportive of your final look. Next up, I'm wiping it off and then going to decide how I'm going to decorate it. You thought I was done, right? Nope. Next comes stenciling, decorating, top coating, the whole shebang. Now, the really great thing about a piece like this, and what I plan on doing, is decorating it differently on every side, so I can choose whatever I want each time I stage, depending on what it is that I'm doing. So first I'm going to start out with just making a pretty pattern. The next one, I'm going to do some arrows. And the next one, I'm going to do something kitchen-y. And then maybe some hearts or even some cute little expressions. I don't know. I like to decide as I go. Another one would be really nice to do something like this. So let's start with some cute little wording and use some different colors and see how it goes. Now in the plaques, I did my stenciling and then I took a rough sand sponge and antiqued it, and that's what I'm going to be doing with this. I like the distressed look. So let's start with a dark blue. As always, load your brush, work it into the bristles, wipe it off, offload most of it, and then stencil away. Now this is going to be very subtle, at least on this side. And you know, the thing to do is just see how it looks, and if it needs to be darker, then go with the darker color. But I'm keeping this really subtle. Let's do a little bit of green. Perfect little piece. 4 sides, 4 designs, 4 different ideas for staging. Next up, distressing and then top coating it.